My name is Mamle KABU. I come from Ghana. I'm a writer and I'm also a development professional. I work in child labor, child protection, gender, and education. Those are my main fields professionally. I think the best thing is that this is an exciting period for writers in Ghana. We went through political turmoil in the 80s and things stabilized in the early 90s. And prior to that, we had sort of the first generation of very well-known African writers like Ama Ata Edu, Atukwe Okai, Ayikwe Ama, whose works are well known. But then there was a period during which, not only writing, but many things virtually grind to a halt. And in recent years, in the past 2 decades, these things have started to revive. And I think particularly in the last decade, it's become very exciting to be involved with writing in Ghana. There are new organizations forming to encourage drama and writing and the arts in Ghana. And I'm part of one of those, the Writers Project of Ghana. And we provide a platform for young writers to, make their voices heard. So that's what I like most about being a writer in Ghana. I think the worst thing about being a writer in Ghana is that sometimes engaging with editorial processes and publication processes can be very frustrating. And I think one of the reasons for that is that the concepts of style and craft for writing in Ghana are not as much developed as they are in the West. And I think especially writers who have a Western training or Western education and have experimented with more modern forms of art and writing can run into roadblocks when you're edited by people who are not familiar with those kinds of styles, and then they think that you're making a mistake because you used an adventurous turn of phrase or something like that. And I've had problems like that in Ghana, and I found those quite frustrating. Yeah. I like the guaranteed warmth, for one thing. I think I find that reflected in the people as well. I think Ghanaian people are warm, they're spirited, and I think they have a spiritual connection in a sense. I think they can be very uninhibited when it comes to things like music and dancing. The spirit of the music they feel. They don't feel shy to just get up and dance, and I think they're uninhibited in their physical expression. That's something that I do love about Ghana. One of many things. What drives my writing is that mystical thing that's quite hard to define, that I've heard writers define as something spiritual, or, for me, I'd say it's a restless urge that has always been there, that pushes me to write or pushes me to express myself. And it will come out in one way or another. If you don't sit down and write fiction, then you'll probably find yourself writing very long emails or even long text messages. It's a drive that is in you, it's inherent. And I'm not quite sure where it comes from, but I know that it's there. So that's what does it. And then what's important to me is to express myself freely, not be trapped into anybody's expectations or any institution's expectations or any expectations of style or genre, just to express what I feel, to feel comfortable doing it, and not to feel restrained in any way. I think that's what's important to me. Yeah. I wish I had more time to read. The thing is that because I'm trying to balance writing with work and motherhood, I have very little time for reading. So I often stop myself from reading when I feel like, because otherwise I won't have time to do the other things that I need to do. But I found myself reading a lot of African literature in recent years because I've become an African writer myself, and I've met a lot of African writers who have become my friends and whose work I want to read. I've also been to quite a few festivals and conferences in Africa. And learned about, writing that I wanted to read and bought copies. And so, yes, I think my most recent reading is very Africa-focused, which is not to say that I wouldn't want to read, non-African literature. I do also. I think my childhood reading influences were primarily European because that's what was available in Ghana at the time. Some of my favorite childhood authors were Enid Blyton, who was just ubiquitous, in my childhood. And I think my favorite childhood author of all was Lucy Maud Montgomery. I loved Anne of Green Gables. But yeah, as I say, recently I've read more African literature. I have enjoyed the works of Chimamanda Adichie. Nigerian writers, I must admit, are some of the ones I read the most. I've also enjoyed the work of Safi Atta, Adaobi, Trisha Nwabani. I Do Not Come to You by Chance. I found a hilarious book. Shade Adeniran, Chuma Nwokolo, there's just so many. The names are tripping over themselves in my head. But also from Uganda, Doreen Bangaina. I very much enjoy her writing. I've recently been in Uganda, actually, facilitating a workshop for FemRite, the Ugandan Women Writers Association. So had a chance to read poems by Beverly Nambozo, and to meet a whole new crop of African writers. It's so exciting, actually. I've read a lot of unpublished work. The names probably wouldn't mean much to you, but they're all coming up. And they were not just Ugandan, they were women from all over Africa at this conference, brilliant writers, whom I'm looking forward to hearing more from in the future. So. I would like to recommend a work by a friend and colleague of mine, Martin Egblewogbe. He is a Ghanaian writer. I think the reason why I've enjoyed Martin's work is it's very experimentational. It pushes the boundaries of the type of writing we're familiar with in Ghana. I hesitate to say Africa because I certainly haven't read, from every country. And I know there's a lot of experimentation out there. But certainly for Ghana, I found Martin to be very experimentational. His work reminds me a little bit of some of the 20th century writers who, experimented with existentialism, metaphysics, wrote philosophical works like Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, Ionesco even. He features Mephistopheles in his stories. Mr. Happy and the Hammer of God is his first collection of short stories, so I would like to recommend that. I think in Ghana, we really need to prioritize what the state supports. And perhaps I'd like to turn the question around a little bit and also talk about good governance, because I think before you get to what the state should support, you need to make sure that the state it has got its priorities right and is spending the money where it's supposed to be spent. Otherwise, you could make your laundry list until the cows come home, and you'd just be wasting your time. So I think if I had to deal with this question seriously, I would look at good governance first before making my list of priorities. But as things stand in Ghana, and especially because I work so much in education and basic education as a development consultant, I think before I funded literature per se, I would look at the basic education sector, because you are not going to have people patronizing literature if they can't read. And what's going on now in Ghana is that standards are way below what they should be in terms of basic education, literacy, and really the very basics. So I think I would want to put funding in there first and make sure it's well supervised before I got there. I think in an ideal world, yes, I would love the arts to be funded, all the arts, not just literature. But I think with our realities right now, we would have to walk before we can run. It's difficult to be surprised about the United States these days because U.S. culture is ubiquitous. It's all over the world, and whether we like it or not, it's, invading our countries. So we're familiar with so many aspects of it already. However, I would say that in terms of Iowa City in particular, what has surprised me is just how much contact one can have with writers here. Well, of course, I'm on a writers program, so but all the same, I've met so many writers, and the people who work with us on the program, even the people who drive us to the grocery store, some of them are Pulitzer Prize winners, and I think that's a great privilege to just be surrounded by so many writers. It's almost a bubble, I kind of wonder how it's going to be when I have to leave this, when it's no longer normal for people to just listen to you talk about writing and talk about it too, So that's been a surprise and a very good one. I think on the negative side, the coldness has surprised me, even though we are just in September. We had a cold spell last week, and I lived in the UK for 10 years, but I can see that what's ahead is something quite different, and I'm kind of dreading that aspect of it, to be honest. And then about America generally, I think just the size of things, the size of the country, the size of the landscape, the size of food portions, the size of drinks, is just is different, very, very different. I think the feeling of plenty, that you can really forget that there are places where, life is very, very different. So it's not been a total surprise, but it's an adjustment, let's say. Yeah. Not that nobody has ever thought to ask me, but I wish they'd ask more frequently, can I publish your work in the shortest possible time?